This will put chills down your spine, and it should. They said that during their seance in the parlor, something began to manifest downstairs to the people, and it had teleported its own body into the room. It teleported its own body. It had claimed to be one of the psychic's guides. And in doing that, it created its own voice and began to talk to her and professed, I am so-and-so's guide, and I am here to talk to you. Now, when this entity manifested, the room began to fill with terror. It began to fill with a particular, this is what they called it, a hatred for humanity. And as soon as that presence filled up every crevice in that parlor, in that basement rather, they stopped the experiment, turned all the lights on, blew out all of the candles. The psychics cut their channeling, and they realized for a fleeting moment that what we thought we were in contact with was something so completely different than what our minds had comprehended, than what they could even imagine. And at that moment, they thought, wait a minute, we opened up a portal, be it a mortal portal or be it through some incantation, and whatever is on the other side is now here. How do we close the door we have opened? But anyways, during the seance, these beings begin to communicate. Some of them claim to have been disincarnate entities. Others claimed and even appeared to be the bug-eyed, bulging-eyed, alien extraterrestrial that we all know to be the Gray. Matter of fact, it was during one seance when I believe it was on a TV, if it wasn't just literally manifesting in the room itself, they called him Mr. Blue. And it was just the image of the face, but it had big eyes, split mouth, and it looked just like an alien Gray, but it was not. It wasn't like it manifested with a body. It was literally almost like an apparition of an alien Gray. Because prior to answering to extraterrestrial, they answered to spirits, conjurings, incantations from people like Abramelin the Mage, people like Eliphas Levi, Sybil Leek, Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons. And yet during these encounters with these beings, there was always this symbiotic relationship between the two. There was always a leveraging of their power in our existence. And so you see this power dynamic of the phenomenon trying to mold the mind of the experiencer or the mind of the practitioner. And okay, yeah, sure, I'll give you something. And then the practitioner says, okay, well, what do you want in return? And this is what I told in the panel. At some point in our research, we're going to have to ask the question of whether or not they're after us. In that there are laws that they play by. And then it's not simply, okay, I'm going to go in and take over. What if, again, they need to knock on the door? And then once that first encounter is created on our end, hoping, and this is what the CE5 movement and what the Parsons technique is all about. I hope you guys have pity on us enough to give us some form of technology. And then at that moment, just like in the Scole experiments, okay, you give me an inch, I'm going to take a mile. And now I'm present. And here's this damning thing about all of this. Sure, we may know how to open the door. Doesn't mean we know how to shut it. So whatever we're dealing with, when Chris Bledsoe says they're like the Adjustment Bureau, yes, they are. They can open up a door right in front of you, walk through it, and they're gone, and you're left with nothing. You know, this is why Nick Redford, when he talks about the Men in Black back in World War I and World War II, you know, they were, oh, let me check your meter in your basement. Okay, and they'd go down and, man, this guy's been in there for 2 hours. And they would go downstairs and they're gone. So, you know, I can keep going. There's no different. Like I saw one video, Ed and Lorraine Warren, they had of a shadow figure walking. You could see the shadow on the wall. The door opens, walks through the door, then it goes, opens the closet door, and goes through the closet. They know where these portals exist. We don't. And there's a reason behind that. Like I said before in the past, if we were to assume that the phenomenon has always existed since, let's say, written history, then we have to assume that whatever this is has hidden from us, even to the point where our technology is being defeated. That is profound.
It feels like we're just in one big Truman Show like experiment.
Yes, it does. And it may not even be an experiment. It may be them keeping us in this world and hiding certain aspects. Like I said, they play by different rules. They don't even want us to know the game. We don't even know the rules to know the game. And yet we experience these rules sometimes when they manifest. It's almost like, okay, you encounter them, okay, boom. What the hell is that? They don't come and tell you about it. They don't want us to know. And that makes me believe that we are not the superior species. Now, okay, when we get to this narrative, okay, well, if there's such a threat, why don't they kill us all? Well, I don't believe they want to. I believe, like I told you last time, it's a parasitic entity in nature where it looks for a host and it feeds off of us. You see, it's worse to be fed off of than it is to die. Because what you're doing, it's like a serial killer. Well, they'll torture you, but keep you alive though. Well, at least they didn't kill me. No, there's a reason why. And then later on, they'll come and get their narcissistic supply. So whatever we're dealing with in nature, it's completely different than what a lot of these theories are proposing.
Become a member on Patreon to get full access to all exclusive content. A few of the perks is the full-length ad-free video version of the interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and behind-the-scenes footage. You will also receive the video interview way in advance before the audio-only interview gets dropped on all platforms. Sign up and become a member today for only $3 a month. The link is in the description.
Man, a lot has happened since the last time we spoke. And I was on another panel with Paul Sinclair and the GOAT, one of the greatest of all time, at least, the very least, if not the GOAT. Was Steve Mera was on the panel, and he's one of my heroes in the field. So the night before, needless to say, I did not get any sleep whatsoever. And you know, been following Steve's work now for years, and it's so fascinating to me because before I even heard of him and his research, I was saying some of the same things he was, and yet we were coming at the same conclusions from different areas of the field. And so he's a parapsychologist or paranormal researcher, just an insane amount of experience, and I have the utmost respect for him. And obviously Paul Sinclair, Chris Evers, and everybody else that was on the panel. But it was a great time, and I had the distinct ability and honor to pick their brains. And thankfully, he liked some of the things I said. So I was kidding. No,
Hell
he
yeah.
did. I was like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? Because it's one thing to be in the field and think that you're saying stuff that's relevant, but then again, it's like, okay, it might be relevant, but is it correct? Like, are these the same conclusions other researchers that have been doing this longer than I've been alive? Are these the same conclusions they're coming to? And sure enough,
It's a badge of honor,
so
man. It's a badge of honor. Just like
yeah,
that thing with I told you with Stanton Friedman when I was
right.
he got my truck, which nobody kind of an
Hmm.
inside thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
What
got
happened
you.
with that?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's a badge of honor. You know what I'm saying? Like when you respect these
yeah.
people in the field, you ain't got to agree with everything they say, but it's respect because they paved the way
Right.
for where we are today, and now we can carry that torch and move forward and try to find truth and
Absolutely.
understanding of this phenomenon. You know?
Absolutely, man. And it was just it was an honor. And of course, I love Paul St. Clair to death, one of my good friends, and just an overall nice guy. And anybody that does, even hosts and people that are guests on shows, you know how it is. You meet people that even though they're good researchers, they're just not good people in general. So it's hard to find that perfect combination of both. And
Hmm.
I'm thankful to know people like that. But it was a great time, and if I could kind of summarize the conclusion of that panel, We don't know what we're dealing with, but the evidence that suggests they're extraterrestrial is very minimal. And it's interesting to hear that because over here in the States, the ET hypothesis is pushed to such a degree where it's like, okay, if you don't believe they're ETs, you're kind of frowned on, poo-pooed, and don't even come on my show. And it's kind of laughable now because when we look at the evidence, and we will today, it's like, okay, it's underwhelming at the very least. Whatever we're dealing with, this is why I say in my lectures, whatever we're dealing with is more demonic than demons, more alien than aliens. It's something that answers to certain incantations. And the question is why? And that's what we're going to get into today. But I wanted to cover, I know we're only going to do a little bit of time here, but I wanted to cover what is called the Scole experiment. Now, for those who are not familiar with it, because at one point I wasn't either, Scole experiment occurred in the 1990s. And it was a group called the Scole Circle, and they were researchers, paranormal researchers, psychics, parapsychologists, and what they would do is they would meet in a location multiple times throughout the year, and they would perform seances in order to contact whatever was out there in the ether, which is, obviously it's good for science and good for the field, but it's also a dangerous, dangerous thing to do. But anyways, during their seances, they experienced myriad amounts of manifestation. The reason I say it's manifestation is because we cannot conclude with any great quantifiable detail if this is technology or if it is something spiritual in nature, something that can materialize to the touch, but then just go out of existence. Is that technology? We don't know. We just know that it manifests. It's here when it wasn't before. That's what's really odd. But anyways, during the seance, these beings begin to communicate. Some of them claim to have been disincarnate entities. Others claimed and even appeared to be the bug-eyed, bulging-eyed, alien extraterrestrial that we all know to be the Gray. Matter of fact, it was during one seance when I believe it was on a TV, if it wasn't just literally manifesting in the room itself, they called him Mr. Blue. And it was just the image of the face, but it had big eyes, split mouth, and it looked just like an alien Gray, but it was not. It wasn't like it manifested with a body. It was literally almost like an apparition of an alien Gray. And so even going on, and I got a list of things they experienced, mobile lighting effects, both solid and fluid. Now, I'm going to say something real quick. Side note. I did an investigation at the Brownella cottage not about 3 or 4 years ago, and we also experienced the mobile lighting effect. I can remember we were doing an EVP session, and the lights are turned off. We're all just sitting there. And I was at the end of the bed while it's a gentleman named Mark on the very beginning of it. And the way this bed was curved, the very end of the beginning, curved up like this to where I could not see him on the other side. It was too tall. And so while we're doing the EVP sessions, I kept getting my name, Nathaniel. Hey, Nate. Hey, Nate. Hi, Nathaniel. And it was almost like a communication between two entities. One was seemingly female, and the male entity, of course, kept telling her to be quiet. And it would tell her to shut up, be quiet, I've got this. And then it would communicate to me by name. But anyways, while this EVP session is going on, all of a sudden there are light effects begin to hit my end of the bed. And I could see it dancing on the wood. At the same time, Mark on the other side of the wood was seeing it on his side as well, dancing across the bed frame. Absolutely incredible. But they experienced this same phenomenon while performing seances, materializations of forms. Some of them were half bodies, some of them were just arms, hands, some of them were faces. They had photographic and video anomalies. They had apports that just manifested in the room. Well, what's that? Well, where did that come from? I didn't bring it in. The phenomenon began to employ different tactics of deception, if you will. Conversations with spirit entities through mediums, which we know that's obviously been heard of. But the being that's so terrifying to me, that really kind of changed the game and moved the needle in a very odd direction. It manifested in the late 90s during one of these seances, but it manifested in the basement. So at the time, they had a seance going on in the main parlor, then they had another one going on in the basement. As the group of people were performing a seance in the parlor, they heard a scream from downstairs. When they ran downstairs, there was an entity, and this is the only way that they have described it. And this will put chills down your spine, and it should. They said that during their seance in the parlor, something began to manifest downstairs to the people, and it had teleported its own body into the room. It teleported its own body. It had claimed to be one of the psychic's guides. And in doing that, it created its own voice and began to talk to her and professed, I am so-and-so's guide, and I am here to talk to you. Now, when this entity manifested, the room began to fill with terror. It began to fill with a particular, this is what they called it, a hatred for humanity. And as soon as that presence filled up every crevice in that parlor, in that basement rather, they stopped the experiment, turned all the lights on, blew out all of the candles. The psychics cut their channeling, and they realized for a fleeting moment that what we thought we were in contact with was something so completely different than what our minds had comprehended, than what they could even imagine. And at that moment, they thought, wait a minute, we opened up a portal, be it a mortal portal or be it through some incantation, and whatever is on the other side is now here. How do we close the door we have opened? Now, this gets back to a point. This is something that Paul St. Clair, Steve Mera, and even Dr. Barry Fitzgerald have articulated. And you'll see some of my research nuance to kind of interwoven into theirs. It's crazy. Even though we've never even talked at these, in the last 5 years, intertwines connectedly. It's very seamless in nature. But the problem is this. The phenomenon has manifested as extraterrestrial in these seances. But then all of a sudden it's guides and it can teleport its own body. Then all of a sudden it's supporting different objects into the room. And what they realized was that there was a leveraging of consciousness being involved. It was involved. And it was being employed because they realized it was almost in a sense that the phenomenon was baiting them into interacting with it. Baiting them. And then once they creeped open the door, then it was almost like it had full-fledged permissive will just to kick down the door and to just invade our reality and begin to manifest different masks to them. Why other researchers, including myself, we are of the opinion that whatever we're dealing with is wearing a mask and that it is not ET in nature. If they were ET, why are they responding like spirits do?
They're one and the same. Not
What
to
the
interrupt.
evidence suggests. Yeah,
Nick,
go ahead.
I've shown this before. I think I've shown it before. Nick Redfern, he didn't give it to me. He loaned it to me, but I can't get a hold of him.
Yeah.
When I went to go interview him in person, Mac Tony's The Crypto Terrestrials. It's a thin book because he didn't finish it before he died. Mac Tony's The Crypto Terrestrials. To sum it up, the ET hypothesis, they've been here. That they are here within our reality.
Right.
They've been here the entire time. And I need to go back through the book, but I've been kind of leaning towards that. Like, are they really coming from out there, or is this reality that's here on Earth? There's many dimensions. Whatever.
Right.
I agree with that, but it's all
Mhm.
here though.
Right.
There could be
Absolutely.
another dimension, like another type of parallel Earth. I don't know, but it's all here, and it's
Hmm.
not technically coming from out there. We're dealing with a phenomena that's been present with us for thousands of years, and they've learned how
100%.
they've learned how to trick us to get their way, to for us to
Right.
do their bidding. You know,
Right. And there's a symbiotic relationship here. And this is what in that panel with Steve Mayer and all the others, we were discussing the nature of the phenomenon in the sense that it will bait us into interacting with it. Because it's and what I was talking about on the panel was that they manipulate the human condition. We want to be immortal. Okay, you want to be immortal? Have a seat. Let's talk. You want technology? Okay, we'll give you a little bit of technology. But the question that we're asking now is, what do they want in return? It's not, again, it's not just, okay, I manifest in your presence. No, you have to document it. And then when you document it, it's upon you to tell your story. In something that Steve Maris said that blew my mind because, oh my God, he said the phenomenon likes to be praised.
praised.
Dude, yeah. And he kind of threw that up to me. He goes, Nathaniel will understand what I'm saying. I'm like, uh-oh, you know what I mean? Because my ears perk up. I'm like, really? What do you mean? He goes, yeah.
Are we bringing a religious connotation into the picture here? Or?
What I'm leaning towards now is that these are the ancient gods. These are the ancient gods, and that some of them are discarnate and have been recruited by these beings. And I know that's a weird, oh, well, you're not saying this, but people are going to listen to this. Okay, through Jordan or Nathaniel, that sounds dumb as hell. Okay, fine. How many times have near death experiences taken place and they've held them hostage? If you do what we want you to do, we'll keep you alive. They're recruiting people flying alien ships out of body, and they never flew a ship in body. What are they doing? They're recruiting. They're recruiting. They're teaching. And it seems, just throwing us out there, it does seem like they're preparing others for the afterlife, and others they're leaving alone.
Mm.
Oh, that's creepy.
Keep going, man.
Creepy.
Keep
That's
going.
heavy. Yes, absolutely. Yes, that does appear to be what it is. This is why it's not like an hierarchy, but it's almost like their own doctrine, their own religious tradition, or some kind of death cult. What I mean by this is when they're abducting people and teaching people how to fly the craft, 99% of the time it's out of body. Why? Because they're not teaching people muscle memory. It's consciousness. It's consciousness. And so when you have these experiencers who live their lives and never fly a ship embodied, and then suddenly they're gone, I would suggest, I would suggest that yes, they are recruiting people, and that a lot of what we're experiencing now are initiatory practices, as Diana Walsh Pasuka has suggested. And so they're looking for people who, okay, do you have this? Okay, well, we can use that. And then they begin to mold and mentor and shape that consciousness, not for embodiment, but for when they're out of body to take and use. I believe I'm just going down this picture of it again. We're dealing with some kind of new model of intelligence, right? And this is why when Steve Maris said that, I thought to myself, first of all, I was getting a lot of religious questions in that panel. 90% of them, all of them were mine. And it was almost like, okay, what are we dealing with here? Are these the gods that Moses said in the book of Lamentations? You sacrifice to gods that did not exist. And then in the comma, to gods, but they weren't gods. They didn't exist. No, to gods that were no gods. And so there is this polemic in the text where they're not gods, but they want to be. It's a very strange issue. But when the phenomenon wants to be praised, gets back into probably one of our earliest shows where the phenomenon wants to create prophets of its own self, where it's not enough to have an experiencer. That experiencer has to become a mediator. It has to go and teach doctrine. And this is where we're at. And I'm talking about people that are atheists are coming to this conclusion. Even though they do not believe in the historical record of antiquity and the mythologies and symbolism and folklore, they're still coming to the same conclusions that whatever we're dealing with is a lot more esoteric in nature, and that it's employing this ET mass as a way to get us, like Steve Mary said, looking to the skies and not looking down here throughout history. But that's primarily that's our conclusion is like, okay, why? Okay, when these beings first I'm not talking about UFOs, I'm talking about these beings. When these beings first manifested, they manifested through seances, incantation.
Aleister Crowley one summoned Lamb, which looks just
Absolutely.
like a gray alien.
Absolutely. Do incantations. Now, this is going to blow your mind. The purpose of the incantation is incarnation.
Why though?
Why though? To become incarnate. This gets back to this relationship of deities and humanity where it is symbiotic. Worship me. I want to be praised. But even then, it's still an incomplete picture as to what we're dealing with. What we do know are the bloody footprints in the snow. It points to the fact that whatever these beings are, yes, they've been here for a long time, and they may have even authored the incantations that these people are unknowingly employing in their rites. It's fascinating.
It's a working hypothesis. And people that are listening to this, what Nathaniel says today, it could change tomorrow, because when it boils down to it, it's hard to get 100% proof on this phenomena. So it is a working hypothesis, and a lot of that requires speculation. But that's not being lazy. That's from a lot of research, because you can go to any researcher, and if they say they know all the answers and all the truth, they're full of they're full of bullshit. It's really just you research the best that you can, and you bring a good working hypothesis to the picture. Hypotheses is really just your best gut, your intellectual speculation.
Right.
So why are they, what do they want with that? Do they want us, some of us, as vessels?
Yes, I do believe that. And I mentioned some of that in the panel because it's like, okay, even with our federal government, let me back up and say this. I've even heard ufologists come out and say, you know what, if we could manipulate our consciousness and somehow get, number one, information from them, but number two, schematics for some new form of technology, then it's worth it. And yet, by history telling its own story, weaving a narrative of deception, sure, they'll give you a little bit of breadcrumbs, but at what cost? It has always cost people. Always. John D. and Edward Kelly, give me the Enochian language. Okay. I want you to swap wives. What? Yeah, I want you to swap wives. And so at first they're thinking they're looking at a beautiful handmaid in the mirror. And then when they swap wives, they come back and it's this ugly, decrepit, older woman laughing at them because it got something. It got something from them. They did something. And in return, they get very little. And this is the same thing with the Parsons technique. I know in Final Events, Nick Redfern writes about how just down the street from me, in Patterson Air Force Base, they were performing the Parsons technique, esoteric rituals, incantations, conjurings, and they were given pieces of scrap metal as an apport. Here's some metal. I want you to collect it. And so that's what these people are doing in the field. You know, oh my God, like Travis Taylor, I'm going to go out to this desert in New Mexico and build an altar. You don't build altars to ETs. So, guys, watch this. It's not what they call you. It's what you answer to.
Keep going, man.
And that's what they're answering to. And that's what they're realizing. These researchers are going out there thinking, okay, yeah, sure, I was trying to go out there and use what NASA got or what, I'll try to use some symbols from ufology to contact them. Time out. How about you build an altar out of rock? and go say a couple prayers to them. Oh, does that work? Yes.
Hello,
Then what makes
CE5.
us think they're right? Absolutely. What makes us think they're extraterrestrial? See, again, this points to this. That's why I predicated that sentence with it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. Because prior to answering to extraterrestrial, they answered to spirits, conjurings, incantations from people like Abraham the Mage, people like Eliphas Levi, Sybil Leek, Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons. And yet during these encounters with these beings, there was always this symbiotic relationship between the two. There was always the leveraging of their power in our existence. And so you see this power dynamic of the phenomenon trying to mold the mind of the experiencer or the mind of the practitioner. And okay, yeah, sure, I'll give you something. And then the practitioner says, okay, well, what do you want in return? And this is what I told in the panel. At some point in our research, we're going to have to ask the question of whether or not they're after us. In that there are laws that they play by. And then it's not simply, okay, I'm going to go in and take over. What if, again, they need to knock on the door? And then once that first encounter is created on our end, hoping, and this is what the CE5 movement and what the Parsons technique is all about. I hope you guys have pity on us enough to give us some form of technology. And then at that moment, just like in the Scole experiments, okay, you give me an inch, I'm going to take a mile. And now I'm present. And here's this damning thing about all of this. Sure, we may know how to open the door. Does it mean we know how to shut it? And now they're here.
Do you think that we can't shut it now? I'm talking about as a collective here on Earth. Maybe there's a portal or something that has been opened. And that's the reason why this phenomena has grown, especially the past 100 years, with abductions, rather it be with encounters with strange phenomena, everything. Do you think that these occultists, these elitists, elitist occultists back then, they opened something that it's we're going too far down the road and we can't shut that window. We can't shut that portal down now.
Yeah, I think that may be true. And if we are in fact dealing with ancient deities or beings that wanted to appear as ancient gods in antiquity, it's quite a game changer. Quite a game changer, because these guys were looking for blood sacrifices, ritual. I mean, again, exactly what we're looking at today. Again, this is not me making this up. If you look at the evidence, it does appear that the phenomenon, and also I said this in the panel, and you guys got to catch this because this is quite a sentence. This sentence alone will start to show you the reality of what we're dealing with. The phenomenon evolved according to our awareness of it. This is why when Kenneth Arnold went out there and told people, okay, well, it was like flying saucers. We heard flying saucers. So the phenomenon manifests as flying saucers. According to the Zeit.
Back in the day, it could have manifested as flying chariots.
Absolutely. Right. It manifested, right? But again, it is what we're looking at what it really is. That's what is incredible. Because if we look at the manifestations, that's what I told people in the panel, if we're going to assume that they're ETs because they've manifested as ETs, we have to assume that they're Dear Edna, and they're all Dear Edna, or they're all of our guides, or they're all ghosts, or they're all demons, or they're all Mickey Mouse, because I've had cases where Mickey Mouse was taking people. So, no, what we're looking at, though, is a new mask. And something that I also need to pay attention to, and this is not a bug in the phenomenon, it's a feature, not an accident, it's intentional. When we have Dear Aunt Ednas and Uncle Bobbies and Grandpa Joes, and when the phenomenon manifests as that, I think I covered this last time when Ted Rice's grandfather manifested to him and tried to assault him. That's when he realized it's not my grandpa. Why? Because what the grandpa allegedly did in that scenario was antithetical to what the real grandfather would have done in real life. Of course, his grandfather would have never done that, but the phenomenon did that as a protocol of belief. Do you believe I am who I appear to be? Sure. Then you're going to interact with me according to the image that I manifest. Oh, it's deception. And so when he realized, okay, I'm going to compare this entity to my real grandfather, the real sample, they did not agree with each other. Now, this is something that I'm going to have to ask Steve Mayer about, because he mentions this on the panel. He says that there are either protocols of reveal or mechanisms of reveal to where you can poke holes in the image and then it collapses and you're left with okay, it's the real entity. But one of those, again, is comparing what it wants you to believe with the actual historical record. Now, here's the problem. We've done that with Aunt Edna, Uncle Joe, right, Grandpa Bobby, or whatever, because we have the historical record. Now, what happened was that the phenomenon realized that we were hacking the images. Really? You're not really my ex-girlfriend. Why? Because my ex-girlfriend wouldn't have done that. And they ding dong, was that you? Hell no, it wasn't me. Okay. Ding, right? Makes sense. There's no historical record for this, and it doesn't agree with what actually. So my point being is that the phenomenon acted like an artificial intelligence in the fact that it created a new character and employed that ET, because when you no longer have the ability to vet that, now you have to lean on manifestation, and it can manifest anything.
What's the working hypothesis now, like as a collective with you, Steve Mara, and others? What's the reasoning for acting like this trickster entity to lure us in? You said earlier is to prepare us for the afterlife.
They are preparing. I believe they are preparing some people for the afterlife.
But what do you think? Of course, speculation, and what you say now, it could change tomorrow. But so this is speculation. What do you think is the purpose for all of this going on? This trickster variable that's at play, luring us in. Is it for our soul? Is it? And you said it relates to the afterlife. But I just don't know where the missing link is here.
Yes, sir. So the working hypothesis I'm personally operating off of is that we are in a habitat that whatever we're dealing with has created. We can call it whatever we want, but we're dealing with entities. Let's just call it the phenomenon that you think you're talking to someone. It's the phenomenon. Well, I looked at them. I know. Did they say anything? Yeah, we had a good conversation. And then you turn around, they're gone. Like completely gone. Nowhere to go. We've seen this with the Men in Black phenomenon. Dan Aykroyd was telling his story about when he was out at SNL and he's outside in New York in an alley. There's a car right here, Men in Black, staring at him. And he said, I was on the cell phone with Britney Spears because I wanted to get her to co-host with me on an episode of SNL. And he said, I was investigating ufology at the time, and I'm looking. And he said, I look back this way. And he said, and I look down, yeah, Brittany, blah, 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 and look back up again. They're gone. No sound. They didn't drive by. They didn't turn around. It's, it's a very thin, alleyway. They're gone. So whatever we're dealing with, when Chris Bledsoe says they're like the Adjustment Bureau, yes, they are. They can open up a door right in front of you, walk through it, and they're gone, and you're left with nothing. This is why Nick Redford, when he talks about the Men in Black back in World War I and World War II, they were all, let me check your meter in your basement. Okay. And they'd go down and, man, this guy's been in there for 2 hours. And they would go downstairs and they're gone. So, I can keep going. There's no different. Like I saw one video, Ed and Lorraine Warren, they had a shadow figure walking. You could see the shadow on the wall. The door opens, walks through the door, then it opens the closet door, goes through the closet. They know where these portals exist. We don't. And there's a reason behind that. like I said before in the past, if we were to assume that the phenomenon has always existed since, let's say, written history, then we have to assume that whatever this is has hidden from us, even to the point where our technology is being defeated. That is profound.
It feels like we're just in one big Truman Show like experiment.
Yes, it does. And it may not even be an experiment. It may be them keeping us in this world and hiding certain aspects. Like I said, they play by different rules. They don't even want us to know the game. We don't even know the rules to know the game. And yet we experience these rules sometimes when they manifest. It's almost like, okay, you encounter them, okay, boom. What the hell is that? They don't come and tell you about it. They don't want us to know. And that makes me believe that we are not the superior species. Now, okay, when we get to this narrative, okay, well, if there's such a threat, why don't they kill us all? Well, I don't believe they want to. I believe, like I told you last time, it's a parasitic entity in nature where it looks for a host and it feeds off of us. You see, it's worse to be fed off of than it is to die. Because what you're doing, it's like a serial killer. Well, they'll torture you, keep you alive though. Well, at least it didn't kill me. No, there's a reason why. And then later on, they'll come and get their narcissistic supply. So whatever we're dealing with in nature, it's completely different than what a lot of these theories are proposing. You know, in when I do lectures, one of my lectures, I talk about the shortest story ever told. Right, the last man on earth is alone in his house. There comes a knock at the door. Why are you knock on my door? Well, why'd you build it? You're the last one here, aren't you? Yeah. So whatever we're dealing with, again, it's not responding to I mean, incantations are an extraterrestrial. They're earthborn. And how are they earthborn? Because in antiquity, we got in contact with entities that wanted sacrifices, sex magic, chaos magic, blood rituals. They wanted worship. And they were a part of this kind of hierarchy or this system of belief, and we inherited these beliefs. Who told us to go and sacrifice children? They did. Who told us to go and do these rituals? It's no different than Parsons and Crowley and all these other practitioners where, okay, if you want to talk to me, here's how you do it, A, B, and C. Here's my phone number. Well, who gave us the number? We didn't just come up with ourselves. They did.
Do you think these rituals, the sex magic, the seances,
Yeah,
these occult practices, do you think these are utilized by certain occultists, and some of these occultists are elitist, it's like whatever this reality is, some say it's simulation,
mm-hmm.
well, whatever, whatever this reality is, all those things I just mentioned, those rituals and everything else, it's like an algorithm. It's like rewriting the code for whatever
Yes,
they
sir.
want to appear in this reality or something.
Correct. It is creating a cognitive interface for them. This is why I say the purpose of the incantation is incarnation. Martin Buber said it like this: God speaks a word and steps into it. What if these beings do the same things? What if, again, that we are the mortal portal and that there is a symbiotic relationship where in order to come to us, they have to come through us? There has to be an invitation. And this is what Steve Merrill was talking about, where, sure, I'll give you something. And you're like, oh my God, that is so amazing. And then the hook is placed, the seed is placed, and they got us by the jaw. Would you like anything else? Sure, but what do I have to do to get it? And what sounds so stupid, but they're falling for this hook, line, and sinker. No pun intended. Right? We're going to manipulate our own consciousness. For what? So you can get a little piece of metal, and oh my God, they got a sign on it. Oh my, there's a symbol. But at what cost? This is why in Jack Parsons' diary, he was talking about, he believed that if he dies during a ritual, that they will take his soul. So whatever we're
Kind of
dealing
goes to
with,
Nigel
again,
Kerner's research and soul harvesting.
yeah, absolutely. But whatever we're dealing with is a lot more spiritual in nature. And I think that we're fighting more about that we're finding out more about that narrative. Because again, and I'll start with this. Are we good? Was that
Yeah,
good? We
yeah, we're
still
good.
all right.
Keep going.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not what we call them; it's what they answer to, and that's why the CE5 movement was preceded by the debug phenomenon, where these people were doing the same things, and the ignorance is not always bliss. I mean, okay, yeah, my intentions with them determine their intentions with me. That is the most asinine breach version of intellectual curiosity I've ever heard. You don't even expect that from strangers with candy. And we can quantify their existence. We know a little bit about them. Hey, they're at least a man. They're maybe a boxer guy or a brief guy, and they may be a Dolphins fan or a Chiefs fan. It doesn't, they're a man. We can at least say, okay, if we put handcuffs on him, he ain't gonna, no. What more are we doing with this stuff? And it's terrifying to me because it is like playing with fire. And something that Steve Maris said, and I've heard this from, he mentioned Robert Bigelow too. Bigelow, when he left the Skinwalker Ranch, he regretted going there. It had destroyed their lives. Like things were loosed and unleashed. And Steve Merrick kind of put it like, yeah, it was just okay. Now that I'm here, it's destructive. And so that's where we are right now in the field. Is there are portions that are trying to say, okay, that it's not esoteric in nature and it's not religious in nature, and then you got other people out there saying, okay, I'm going to build an altar to them. You don't build altars to extraterrestrials. You build altars to worship and to pray to entities. And that's what these beings respond to. That's a red flag, a huge red flag for me.
So with a few more minutes,
Mhm,
so when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I mentioned this before. I probably mentioned to you once.
mhm,
Um, I was came home from school real quick. Came home from school, and I used to watch, I don't know, whatever's on World's Wildest Police Videos and
mhm.
Saved by the Bell or whatever was on,
Heck yeah.
and so I fell asleep in the recliner. TV was on, and I fell asleep. And this way was like vertical Venetian blinds,
Mhm,
and the street light was shining through. But I fell asleep and I opened my eyes. It was like it was raining and it was dark, and I could see the street light coming through. This all happened quick. So I turned, all the lights were out.
mhm,
Turned, the TV was out. Everything. It was just dark. I turned, but the street light was shining through, and in front of the TV was a apparition, a man, long hair
mhm,
and a beard, and it was apparition. It probably lasted, I don't know, it's hard to tell, but maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and that seemed like an eternity. You know,
mhm.
it creeped me out. I didn't know what it was. I thought somebody broke in, but it disappeared. It, this all happened quickly. So then I had two cats, right? Then I heard in the kitchen behind me,
Mhm,
like this all happened within maybe 15 seconds. I don't know. It just seemed like an eternity the way
mhm.
explaining it. Then I felt sound like the cats were eating in the cat bowl. You know, you could hear food drop in the metal cat bowl, whatever.
Mhm.
Oh shit, somebody's in there. So my adrenaline, like I'm like I may die here. I don't know. I
Right.
popped the recliner, stood up, turned the light on, looked. I don't see anything. Cats are on the couch sleeping or just looking at me. They're looking at me, I believe. And so I went around. Doors locked, windows are closed. I was paranoid, man. Like, what the hell? I didn't do
Right.
drugs then. I didn't drink then. Like I experienced something,
Absolutely.
and it scared the shit out of me. I've never had an app. That's the only apparition like that. Like when I
Mhm.
mean, it looked like a person that was kind of through a heavy screen door. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like you can see
absolutely.
it.
Like a
It was,
frosted glass or something. Yeah.
but more like a screen,
Hmm.
more like a screen.
Okay.
Like he was kind of glitching in and out, but it was there.
Wow.
He was
Yeah.
there though, man. And like, what was what? is what it, how come some people, whatever this entity is, can show themselves as a gray alien, or as in my situation, it showed itself as a man, long hair and a beard. But
Hmm.
it could be somebody that I know. I really don't know yet. I don't know. But
You know,
like, well,
yeah,
why is this element at play here? You know what I mean?
yes,
This going back and forth with either a gray alien, because I think you and others, Steve, it's possibly that we're dealing with the same phenomena. I really think so.
that's yeah, that is I came to that conclusion long before I even heard about their work. But yes, that's yeah, a singular intelligence masking itself throughout history. And I think what we're doing now is we're falling in love with its newest incarnation.
The gray alien and other entities that come from outer space.
Yes, yes, that's it. And not realizing that the program itself has introduced a new character to which we can no longer vet. You know what that means? We can't we there's no historical record to compare the gray alien to, while everything else is manifested as there is.
And maybe
Now it's it. Oh, good, good,
and
good.
maybe back then it showed itself as a figure in a burning bush.
Ooh, there we go. Or a demon, or a ghost, or a god, or an angel. And when you look at the multiplicity of phenomena, yes, I mean, like like I said, Chris Bledsoe, there was an orb, and all of a sudden something crawled out of it. Dr. Barry Taff, okay, there was an orb at San Pedro haunting, and then an apparition crawled out of it, or something. And then I hear a preacher from the church, or from the movement I grew up in, saying he saw an angel because a ball of light began to fly into the church. What? What if this is all? What if they're all the same? In that this is just a well, first of all, we know that they're operating on within laws that we are ignorant of. We know they're doing that. We don't know what the laws are, but we know, hey, listen, when they pull certain levers, they can do whatever they want to do. Then they're intentionally creating a web of deception around us to keep us within the box and prism of our own minds. They don't want us to know for thousands of years. I mean, even now with technology and the Skinwalker Ranch, okay, you took this, they were putting up cameras on light poles. And so, oh my God, the next day they found like $1,000 worth of those cameras ripped off the light pole. So they put it back up and then put up a camera on the other side to film these cameras. And then something crawls up the pole and they didn't stop, just grabs it and rips it off the pole. And then the camera on the other side doesn't even catch it. Doesn't even catch it, Michael.
Hmm.
What are we dealing with here, man? What are we dealing with here?
And maybe what we see is showing itself as an orb today. It could have been what they used to show as a little small flying like an orb, a little fairy.
Yes, absolutely. This gets back. I mean, I think it was a Scole experiment where they had a silver disc, yay big, flying around in the seance, and they looked inside, and there were little beings in the ball in this disc had Egyptian hieroglyphics on it, flying around. And I mean, dude,
Mm.
whatever we're dealing with, again, it's so funky and so like out there that a lot of these researchers, you know, it gets back to something that I've been professing now for years. If we compartmentalize the phenomenon, then we fall back into the deceptive pattern of their mask. That's a separate entity than this. And what we're missing is the potential of it being a singular intelligence that has orchestrated all of these manifestations to get us to believe, hey, they're different entities in and of themselves. Meanwhile, they're still manipulating us. And I think that's what our government's trying to do is that, listen, we want a technological advance and supremacy over all the other world powers. How do we do that? Well, do a couple of incantations, build an altar. They'll have pity on us and gives things to us, but at what cost? And
Mm.
that's where we are, my friend.
Well, Nathaniel, the reason why people listening, the reason why I have you come on this show, do your monthly gig here on Beyond the Forbidden, is because this
Yeah.
is a working hypothesis, man. And like I said, what we say today or what you say today, it could
Yep.
change slightly next month, but
Right.
that it's because we don't know, like, and if we had to stand in front of a court of law, we don't know 100% exactly
Right.
yet what this phenomena is or wants with us, or, and the reason why I have you on once a month through this gig, man, is because I
Mhm.
love getting your take and I want to get closer to the truth. Will we ever get the truth?
Right.
I don't know. We don't know. We hope, but maybe we can get a better understanding. Maybe not 100% truth before we die,
Mhm.
pass on,
Right.
but maybe we have a better understanding than we did yesterday. So each month,
100%.
so each month is what I like for you to come on. Each month, maybe we can have a little bit better, maybe just a little bit understanding than the previous month. But
100%.
over time, each month, you come on, and just your months and years of research and get closer and closer to understand, maybe not truth, but more
Mhm.
understanding. So
Absolutely.
Nathaniel Gillis, thank you very much, man.
Thank you, brother. And I'll shut up after this. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, man, and a privilege. You're one of my favorites, man. You're not just a good host, you're a personal friend of mine, and I really mean that. But a good researcher is not known by all of the good answers he gives. He's known by all of the good questions he had. And what's
Mhm.
happened in the field is we have a lot of researchers that are asking bad questions, getting bad answers. And so if the only thing I can offer is, hey, listen, these are the correct questions to ask. Hey,
Mhm.
like I said, it's not what we're calling them, it's what they're answering to. That's a huge deal. I'm gonna
Yep.
get out of here, man. I'm gonna go get something to drink and just chill out, bro.
Well, Nathaniel, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, not a problem, man. I'll talk to you soon. I'll text you.